So, good morning, everyone. In our last class, we have been discussing about the basics of biomedical signals, and then we have discussed about this electroencephalogram, electrocardiogram, electrooculogram, electromyogram, and also we discussed about the evoked potentials. Okay, so then we were discussing about what is the need for signal processing and why we want to do signal processing, and we discussed that the signals uh, they contain a lot of information, but those informations are hidden. So if we want to use that hidden information, then we have to process the signal so that we get some meaningful output. Those meaningful outputs can be used for the for different applications like diagnostics, like designing of assistive devices, and so on. Right. Then we discussed about this basic architecture of biomedical signal processing, and we discussed about the different aspects like why sensors and electrodes they are used, what are the what we call functions of these pre-amplifiers, and then filters and all other things. Right. Now, coming to the signal acquisition, the data acquisition it helps in converting recorded signal into a form that is suitable for final processing platform. Okay, so what do you mean by signal acquisition? Signal acquisition is that our body is uh, getting some generating some potentials or other signals like voice signals, speech signals, then movement signals like gastrogram. Okay, so in these cases, we are getting the signals and then we are pre-processing it in the hardware domain, and after doing some filtering in the hardware domain, then we are digitizing the signal, and once the signal is being digitized, it is being stored in a digital system, say for example in a computer, where we can use it for further processing. So this whole of this process where we are acquiring the signal and then storing the signal in the computer, this process is called signal acquisition. Okay, so over here we have seen the transducers or the electrodes. They help us to capture the physiological events, and these physiological events it can be the biopotential signals like the electrocardiograms, electromyogram, like this. Then we have sound. Okay, so speech signals. Then we have mechanical pressure. So mechanical pressure, as I told you, the gastrograms. If you want to analyze, then you can look into this, and then we can also look for some chemical changes. However, for that we need some biosensors to sense the chemical changes. Okay. One of the there are certain other sensors, normal sensors and transducers, um, which are not basically biosensors. They can also be used. Say for example, if you are looking for breath analysis, whether someone has consumed alcohol or not. In that condition, what you do? The police, what they do, they place a sensor just in front of the mouth, and they try to find out the ethanol concentration. Over there, we do not use biosensors, but we use normal electronic transducers or the sensors which can help us in sensing the ethanol concentration in the patient's body or the volunteer's body. So if you see most of this these chemical changes, they are uh, it is basically out of the purview of our course, so we will not be discussing much about these chemical changes sensing. Okay, then in our last class you have already seen that the electrodes or the transducers, they are attached with an preamplifier, as the physiological signal is of very low voltage. Okay, I told you one of the most strongest signal what we get from the body is the signal from the cardiac muscles. Okay, and those are also in the millivolt range. So to amplify the signal, so that we can process it in a reliable way in the digital domain, we need the help of the preamplifiers. Then after we have amplified it, we use this analog to digital converter, which performs the process of sampling and quantization to convert the signal into a digital signal. Okay. So signal pre-processing, what we do? So most of the physiological signals, whether ECG, EEG, MG, they are acquired non-invasively from the skin surface. Okay. Now there are certain uh, methods where you can acquire these signals, especially the EEG and EMG signals, from within the body. So how do we do? We use some electrodes which are regarded as needle electrodes, and these needle electrodes are being inserted within the human body, and they help us in getting information from a localized area. Okay. So when you are putting any surface electrodes onto the surface of the skin, what is happening? Suppose this is the skin surface, and over here you are having the electrodes which is collecting the data. Now if you put this electrode over the skin surface, so the potential generated, say, in this area, they will be having some contribution to the signal which is being sensed by these electrodes. Okay. So we are getting an average of a wider area. Okay. On the contrary, if we use the needle electrodes, so the needle electrodes, they will be the, as the name suggests, they will be the pointed electrodes. They will be pierced within the human body. Say I want to analyze the EMG signals, so I can put the this needle electrode in such a way such that I can get the EMG information from a specific muscle fiber or from a specific region. Okay. However, if you want to go for this, it is a it is an invasive procedure, and since it is an invasive procedure, you need very specialized or trained personnel who can insert the electrode at a specific location. So under normal circumstances, if you go to the medical hospital, you will find that usually the surface electrodes, they are put for the collection of the ECG, EMG or the EEG. Okay. So over here I have given the example of the EMG. The same thing happens in the case of the brain. If you want to get the signal from a specific location, we can insert a needle electrode into the brain, and that from that specific region we will be getting the signals. Okay, biopotential signals. So yeah, so under normal medical practitioner in the practicing conditions, we usually acquire the signal in a non-invasive way. However, the needle electrodes, the invasive method, it is used mostly in the research institutions. Whether you are going into the this high-ended medical research where you are using primates or other animals, and you want to study how uh, the use of a specific drug or a specific treatment module, it is affecting a specific region of the human body or the tissue. Okay. Now the problem over here with the non-invasive way of signal acquisition is that one of the advantages, um, any untrained professional, if you tell them that you place the electrodes over this positions, they will be able to acquire the thing. But the problem with this non-invasive system is that it is getting information from a wide area, so it is basically giving you an average. Also, if you consider the signals which are coming from the uh, from a depth, it will be having a very low contribution to the signal component. Okay. Another important thing is that these signals, they are contaminated with different types of noise. One of the foremost noise is the motion artifact. Motion artifact means suppose the electrodes has been placed onto your body, you cannot while the acquisition is taking place, you cannot stay still. There will be some micro tremors which is happening unintentionally due to the autonomic nervous system activity from your body. So you cannot avoid that. Also, there might be, if you look into a condition, if you are placed in a situation where you have to be, you have to sit for a longer duration, say 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and you know that you need not move, then you will feel psychologically that you are having an itching at some location and all these things. So these psychological parameters come, and then you have an urge to itch or to move. So all of these conditions, what happens is that this induces a movement in the electrode. So there is a relative movement between the electrode and the skin surface, and due to this movement of the electrode and the skin surface, a noise is being incorporated into the signals, and that noise it is called motion artifact. So micro tremors and this large movement when you are moving intentionally or unintentionally, they incorporate noise into the signal. So because of this reason, you are having the one of the foremost noise incorporated into the system. Apart from this, since these electrodes, they are exposed to the environment, they are prone to power line interference. They are prone to power line interference. I don't know how many of you have used transistors which were being used for the this for this AM and FM radios. If you take those radios near to the any of the electrical appliances in the previous days, they would have distorted noise. However, if you would have gone away from the power line source, the distortion would have gone. So why that is happening? That is happening because the power lines what are being supplied to our homes, they are electromagnetic radiations, but they are being forced through the electrical wire, right? They are being transmitted through the electrical wires, but they have that electromagnetic capability, so they will be having an electrical and the magnetic field outside their what do you call outside the what do you call electrical wires also. And if you are near to a power line system, then these systems, they can, these biomedical acquisition system, they may acquire some power line interference, okay, the signals from the power line, right? Then when we talk about the electrodes, we consider that the electrodes are very stable, chemically stable. However, if you look into your class 11 12 knowledge, you will understand that any metallic systems, they undergo corrosion. Okay, so there is a possibility why the corrosion is happening, because some chemical interactions is continuously going on. Now, when we are placing the electrodes and or placing the electrodes for a longer period of time, or we are reusing the electrodes, there will be some chemical reactions going on onto the electrode, and that would lead to the electrode instability. And this is the reason you will find, if you go for the ECG acquisition in any of the hospitals, they will use disposable electrodes. Because if you are using the disposable electrode say for 5 minutes, it is expected that for these 5 minutes the electrode would remain stable. Okay. However, if you are using it say for 24 hours, 25 hours or 48 hours, depending upon the quality of your disposable electrode, the noise may start getting incorporated into your signals. Okay, then I already told you this muscle activity. And then again, yeah, if there is a loose connection, if in the electrical circuits, if you see, if there is a loose connection, what happens? There is a sparking which is happening. Now when there is a sparking, what does that mean? There is a loss of signal component. Okay, when there is sparking, your light and heat are being generated, and from where this light and heat are being generated, basically you are losing the signal component. The same thing happens over here also. When you are putting the electrodes or these wires and all these things onto the human body, and if there is a loose connection, there will be intermittent disconnection, and due to those intermittent disconnection, there will be the loss of power to the signals, and that would also incorporate some noises into the signal. Okay, so these are the some primary sources of noises which are there if you use these non-invasive types of electrodes. Obviously, some of the things like loose connection, it would also be there in the case of the invasive electrode systems. Okay. However, if you use the invasive systems, um, you will be having a much more localized system, and also usually the needle electrodes, they are not used repeatedly. Once they are used, they are being disposed of, and a new electrode is being used, and hence this electrode instability stuff, it is eliminated. Okay. Now these noises, as I told you, they get modulated with the original signal with a similar spatiotemporal distribution. Okay, with a similar spatiotemporal distribution, but at a different intensity level. What do you mean by temporal distribution? Temporal distribution. Temporal मतलब anyone? No one? Space and time. Temporal comes from time. Spatiotemporal. If you, so spatio means space. Temporal means time. So while you are acquiring the signal, along with your signal, since they are getting modulated, I hope many of you know what is modulation is. So AM modulated or frequency modulated. So usually when we talk about this modulated over here, so it can be either frequency modulated or the amplitude modulated. Mostly it is amplitude modulated because amplitudes are being added up. Okay. So the noises and the signals what you are getting, you will not be in a time domain, you will not be able to separate these two components. Okay, so that's why it is given that they are having a similar temporal distribution but at a different intensity level. Okay. Now this noise signal possesses a variety of signal bands, frequency bands, where the low frequency band signifies the baseline vendor. The medium frequency band shows the power line interference, and the high frequency band represents the electromyographic noise. Okay. Now suppose uh, let us take the first example, baseline wandering. So what is baseline wandering? Okay. Suppose you have started acquiring the signal at the morning session. Okay. So at that time we have a very comfortable temperature, say 25 degrees centigrade. Now you are taking the signal continuously, and in the afternoon the temperature increases to say 35 degrees centigrade in the room. Now there is a change in the temperature, and since there is a change in the temperature, the resistivity of your electrodes and the acquisition system must have changed, and there would be a, if you try to draw the baseline, suppose initially the baseline was like this, so it will either increase like this, or the baseline it may decrease like this, depending upon what is the nature of your circuit. Okay. Now this slow movement of the baseline, say for example it is moving up, this slow movement of the baseline, it is called baseline wandering. Okay. So suppose you are measuring the ECG signal, it goes like this. Okay. It is continuing. In the case of baseline wandering, what would happen? Something like that. It would go. Sorry. So you see, initially your baseline was here. Now there has been change in the potential. Even though your signal has not changed, what is happening? Your ECG signal, it is moving upwards. Slowly it is moving upwards, right? In this fashion. So this slow movement of the potentials over a period of time on a time scale, it is called baseline wandering. When I am talking about this temperature, it is just an example. Baseline wandering can happen in many ways. Okay, suppose there is a instability in the electrode. Due to that, there is a polarization of the electrodes. Okay, usually you will study in bioinstrumentation class, biomedical instrumentation class, that there are polarizable electrode, non-polarizable electrodes. We usually try to use non-polarizable electrodes so that they do not get polarized. However, if there are any impurities into the electrode, if you get by cheap electrodes, they may have some what do you call this, impurities, and that may lead to the polarization of the electrodes. And if that polarization electrode it happens, then there might be your baseline wandering. Okay, so then medium frequency in the power line interference, we know it is 50 hertz in India, right? So in India, you will be getting a 50 hertz components within the signal, and if it is uh, um, there, then you have to take proper precaution to eliminate the power line interference. Now, if it is a high frequency noise, say for example, it is having a frequency of 1.5 kilohertz, in and around, we do not have any frequency component from the environment. However, our muscles, they are continuously what we call, they are continuously being active to maintain the tonicity of the muscles. Okay, so you must have studied about the tonicity of the muscles or tone of the muscles, because if I am keeping my hand like this, our muscles are working. If I am keeping it in the resting position, even then our muscles are being working to keep the human body in a proper position. Okay, so they are continuously working, and when they are continuously working, the EMG signals, they have a frequency component which is more than 1 kilohertz, and it may extend up to 4 or 5 kilohertz. So if you are having signal components in the high frequency domain, then you can blindly say that the signal is corrupted with the EMG noise. Okay, any doubt till here? No. Okay. Now, applications of the biomedical signal processing. The aim of the biomedical signal processing is to extract the most relevant information from the biological signals. Okay, the information what we extract, it may have clinical, biochemical, or pharmaceutical relevance, and these may help in understanding various biological phenomena, disease diagnosis, and predicting human health. So these three are the main application areas of biomedical signal processing: biological phenomena, We want to study the biological phenomena. We want to do the disease diagnosis, and we want to predict human health. Apart from that, in recent years, we have we are using this biomedical signal processing to manipulate assistive devices, and in the rehabilitation purposes. Okay, so combinedly we can say rehabilitation engineering, rehab engineering. I'm writing in short. So rehab means rehabilitation engineering. In short, it is regarded as rehab. Okay. So these are the broad, what you call, application areas of the biomedical signal processing. And what are the common signals? The common signals are electrocardiograph, then electroencephalograph, electrooculograph, electromyograph, then we have speech signals, then phonocardiogram. What is phonocardiogram? Mm-hmm. So what is ECG? Electrocardiogram? Pardon? E- Huh. Yeah, exactly. The word phono means sound. It comes from the word sound. So, in electrocardiograph, we have these electrical potentials. The ECG signals are being generated. Whereas phonocardiogram, if you put your ears near to the chest of another person, you will be able to hear the lub dub signals. In general perspective, we call it lub dub. So if you look into the doctors, if you go to doctor with some chest infection, they will use the stethoscope to hear the sound. Now, if you have to record this sound, doctor's ears cannot record the sound, right? So we can use this electronic stethoscope system with a recording system, so that will help you in recording the heart sounds. And these heart sounds, they can divulge a lot of information, whether our heart valves they are functioning properly or not. Because suppose there is a leakage of some blood from one chamber to the other chamber during the systolic period of the various heart muscle area or heart tissues. So if there is any leakage of the blood from one chamber to the other, there will be a gushing sound. Okay. Say for example, if you are watering your plants and you have put on the water, so if you give the water to the plants, you will hear no sound. However, if you suppress one of the ends by a certain amount, you will hear a hushing sound or a gushing sound, right? Now similar kind of sounds are being generated by our heart muscles also, if there are any abnormality within the flow path of the blood. So um, during the preliminary analysis, the doctors, they can have an estimate through the stethoscope, and then for the degree of damage, or if you want to estimate the degree of the damage, then we have to go for this thing, this echocardiogram and other advanced imaging techniques. Okay, so this phonocardiogram, it is also very useful, right? Then processing and analysis of these signals can be used for health monitoring. Okay. Then designing rehabilitative devices and evaluating treatment outcome. Okay. So broadly, if you look, the applications of the biomedical signal processing, they can be categorized into these five domains: rehabilitation engineering in the field of medicine, disease diagnosis, understanding human psychology and behavior, and development of the smart devices. So example, first I will go with this application of the speech signal. So one of our students, he developed this wireless voice controlled system for rehabilitative devices. So what he did is that he developed a voice control device wherein a quad bot it has been used as the representative rehabilitative device. Okay. Now using this voice control system, he was trying to control the movement of the quad bot, say in the right, left, and in the forward direction. So the control system was designed to have two modules, one signal acquisition and the classification module, and the second one was the control module for the servo motors which were present in the quad bot. Okay. The technology used in the study can be extended to provide rehabilitative aids. Since we do not have access, did not have access to the rehabilitative aids, we use QuadBot as the representative rehabilitation devices. So, how does this system work? So, you have a voice signal. It has been acquired through the microphone. Then, squaring of the voice signals was done. Then, a filter which is regarded as smoothing filter, which is basically an averaging filter, that was used. Then a multiplier was used. Then collection of the signal components were done, and after this collection the peak detection was done, and from the peak detection what you had, we found out the amplitude ranges in what range it happens. So if you see, if the sound level was categorized into high, medium, low, depending upon if the amplitude ranges was greater than 1800 units, or 351 to 1799 units, or 100 to 350 units. So then the output of this one was used to glow the virtual LEDs in a device, and also it was used to what you call to it was used to control the digital outputs of the control system. Okay, so where the LEDs were attached. So initially we did this uh, what you call testing using this in the virtual module and in the hardware module using the digital outputs. Okay. Now the problem is that when we are talking with each other. So how does the system know that we are talking with a person or we are trying to communicate with the device? So under that case, a switching device, it was incorporated, and it compared the output of the switching device, and then the output of this switching device was put into the AND gate. So when we are getting the signal both from this voice acquisition system and from this switching device, then only these virtual or the real life LEDs, they will be uh, controlled. Okay, so this is the virtual this thing we made a software for this one, a program for this, not a software program for this one. So at different levels, so over here we have the high level, and at the same time this digital controller to glow the red LED. Then for the medium level, this LED was being glown, sorry, and lastly in the low level, this orange LED, it was glown. Now if you see, sorry, these are the voice signals which have been captured. Okay. Now from here we had these control signals which were being generated, and we saw that they could be generated in a proper way. So we transferred to this quad board through Zigbee transmissible module, which is basically a wireless module, and then we looked into the movement of this one. So this is the basic architecture. So voice signal acquisition module, it was developed, and after it was tested that yeah, all these parameters range has been set, then we use this microcontroller to implement that program with the help of this Arduino Uno, and the control signals which were being generated, they were being sent to the quad boards through the Zigbee systems, okay, transceiver systems. So over here in the Zigbee, we had another Arduino Uno and a Zigbee system which would receive the signal from the biosignal acquisition and the control signal generation system, and then uh, it was controlling the RC servo motors of the program. Okay. Unfortunately, at that time we did not take the video, so we do not have the video for that one. However, I have a video for you for a similar application. Okay. So let me play the video.
Activate. Base left. Stop. Base right. Stop. Shoulder up. Stop. Shoulder down. Stop. Elbow up. Stop. Elbow down. Stop. Wrist up. Stop. Wrist down. Stop. Hold. Hold. Release. Release.
Okay, so the main idea over here to show you this video is that whatever you do, ultimately you have to, in most of the rehabilitative devices, you have to control a motor. And motor, they just understand whether there is a high signal or a low signal. Okay, so they take digital inputs. So whether you are controlling quad board or you are controlling rehabilitative devices like a robotic arm or a robotic vehicle, the only thing what the instruments understand is a high and a low. So you have to design a system where you can generate a series of highs or a series of lows so that a particular what do you call particular motor, whether it is a servo motor or it is a DC motor, it will be functioning in a proper way. So you have to develop that logic. So this is the only thing which you need to remember while you are trying to work with these biomedical signals. Okay. So I think we are already finished our time. Yeah, only 5 minutes are left. So I will stop over here. So in the next class, we will be looking into the other stuffs. Do you have any questions by any?